to another edition of Valpo Sports Night. I'm Drew Taylor. To my right is Mike Targomsky, General Manager of WVUR and Sports Staff Writer for The Torch. Also is Dave Caulfield. He's the Assistant Sports Director at WVUR. Guys, let's jump into it. As we approach the conference schedule for the men's and women's soccer teams, where do you predict they'll finish this year in the Horizon League?
Well, I really think it's hard to pick in both leagues just because it's so early, but basically in the men's league, it's going to be a little bit tougher just because a lot of the teams that did badly last year are up at the top of the standings this year before conference play. For example, Wright State was picked last in the coaches poll, or picked to finish last, and they actually have the best record out of all the Horizon League teams so far. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up once Horizon League play begins. But for the Crusaders, I'm going to pick them in 4th place. And that's not a slight to the Crusaders, but there's just so much talent in the Horizon League right now. Can they make it up to 3rd? Absolutely. But I really think with, Valpo has been playing some really good soccer lately, only losing to NIU, number 20 NIU, with only 5 minutes left in the 85th minute. NIU scored that goal, and they came in 2nd at that tournament. Mm-hmm. So, but with teams like Butler and Milwaukee at the top, and maybe Wright State if they keep it going, it'll be hard for Valpo to finish any higher than 4th.
Well, I don't want to contradict myself from last week, so I'm going to stick with 1st this week. But I really do believe that. I think they have a very good goalkeeper with Zobek, and they have a lot of offensive firepower. Like I said, Coach Mike Avery made some lineup moves that are really going to benefit his team, and not just now, but also the players in the future. And I think that's one thing to really look at is Stefan Antonievic in the back. Chad Solt moves up just a little bit. You're right. Butler and Milwaukee are going to be very tough. But Valpo's also been very successful against Butler in the past couple of years. Yeah, they didn't have the season they wanted to a year ago, but I honestly think that the recruiting class that Avery brought in, as well as the team that he already has assembled, with the start that they've gotten off to, if they keep it going, I think they could win it out.
I think you're right about Zobek. He's been very impressive. Even last year, stepping in when the first-string goalie got injured. What do you think about the women's teams, however?
The women is a little bit easier to predict, in my opinion. Unfortunately for the women, I really don't see them at the top of the conference anytime soon. I don't think anyone is going to catch Milwaukee. I mean, they're just stellar all around. Wright State and Detroit are going to be another focus in the league. Butler will be up there too, maybe towards the end of the season. I say Valpo finishes in 6th place, and that's semi-generous. They could finish lower than that. The Crusaders are 3-3-1 right now, and they have a winnable game against Green Bay coming up. But other than that, they have a brutal conference schedule. They have to go to Detroit, to Milwaukee. It's going to be really tough for them. So I say that they finish 6th in the league.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 6 as well. Sarah Hagen is going to win first, and by her I mean Milwaukee. But I don't think that Valpo has enough scoring, to be honest with you. A couple of years ago, they were, 4th? I think they had 4th and made it into the tournament. 3rd, actually, I believe. I don't think they'll be able to get anywhere close to that again. 6th is just getting into the tournament, and I barely see that happening after the season a year ago. I don't know what happened in terms of the goal scoring, because a couple years ago that's all they could do. But goalie-wise, Kristen Mansky is a really good goalkeeper. I just don't see anything else that really benefits them in the Horizon League. There's probably a handful of teams that are at the bottom that'll be fighting for that 6th spot again like last year, and I think Valpo might be able to take it, but that, like Dave said, might be a little generous.
And last season down the stretch, it really was the offense. Defense was always there, but they kept losing 1-0, 2-0, things like that.
Late second goals.
Exactly. Well, guys, let's stick with Valpo athletics here for a second. The Valpo volleyball team got off to a great start last season, winning a couple preseason tournaments, but now this year they've been shut out 3 times a total in this early season. Is that cause for concern?
No.
Care to elaborate?
No, I don't think so. That's one thing. Karen Avery. I don't want to say a new look for the team, but they're new in the middle, up front. They also have a bunch of players playing for the first time, even though it's their sophomore year, and a couple of new freshmen. And Morgan Bile has been a big key in the middle for them. Last night against UIC, she had 12 kills, hit 688. That's a monster percentage. Yeah. But I don't think there's really any cause for concern. They've been playing some really good competition in these tournaments where they've been gone from Thursday to Sunday, and then the following weekend they went from Thursday to Sunday. I wouldn't say anything for concern. Last night they had a beatdown of UIC.
Yeah, they did.
And I think when conference play starts, they're going to be evenly matched against the top half of the conference like they usually are. and I don't think that they're going to see too many shutouts when it comes Horizon League time.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike. The other stat that, I mean, they've had 3 shutout defeats this year, but they've also had 5 shutout victories this year. I don't think it's a concern at all. The shutout games that, Drew, you're alluding to were against Notre Dame, Ball State, and Ohio State. Those are 3 really, really good teams.
Absolutely.
And last year at this time, they weren't playing nearly as high of a caliber schedule as they are right now. And as Mike said, the game against UIC on Wednesday was just really was a total beatdown. I mean, in that last set, they won 25-13, and they went on a 7-0 run in the middle of the set. They were leading, I believe, 19-6 at one point or something like that. So I think they'll be fine as the season goes along and as they head into conference play.
They're 1-0 in Horizon League play.
And I think Morgan Bile, I think you're right, the new addition, she's been very good so far. The Crusaders have definitely featured her early on. All right, guys, a lot of excitement surrounding the men's basketball program. Obviously, Bryce Drew taking over as head coach, as well as there's been a few player additions. Can they improve from a season ago, even with the loss of Brandon Wood?
I think that they can. They definitely have depth at guard position with Eric Buggs coming back, Jay Harris, Ryan Brokoff. But the thing that is going to determine whether they actually do better this year is if they can solve their big man problems.
Sure.
They've lost a lot of talent there with Corey Johnson leaving, Michael Rogers. We just learned today that Witt's not coming back. So if they can find a solution to their big man problem with Drew at the helm, they'll definitely do better this year and look towards success in the future.
I do think they can improve. It's going to be difficult because, like you mentioned, losing Brandon Wood and Corey Johnson, that's 60% of the scoring and pretty much half the rebounds as well. But I think that they've been able to, they really improved offensively and defensively from a year ago, rebounding as well as how they turned the ball over defensively to get it back in the offense's hands. And I think with Eric Buggs running the point that they could spread out the offense fairly well. Very good point guard. Jay Harris coming in off the bench behind him. You mentioned Ryan Brokoff, and Reggie Edwards is a scoring machine if you didn't pay attention to the World Juniors that he was in. So they might not be losing too much in terms of scoring, And Kevin Van Vyk really does a really nice job coming off the bench. I think that's going to be a big factor for him in terms of the big man question that you had, is if Kevin could keep it up, because he did a great job. And I think every time he touched the ball, he was at the line, too, after he had scored, because that's what it seemed like for me last year.
Are they close to Butler, or are we still putting them in their own separate category?
I think until someone unseats them, you have to put them in their own separate category, because it's a very tough thing to do, is to go to the championship game 2 years in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And especially last year when everyone was like, Butler won't do it, out of nowhere. They came storming through the end of the conference season, the conference tournament, and then through the NCAA tournament. And that stamp game against Pittsburgh, when I think it was Pittsburgh at the end of the NCAA tournament, until you unseat them, they're in their own class.
I think you can respect them, but I don't think we should necessarily put them on a pedestal. They need to, they need to act like they're in the same league. Otherwise, they'll never defeat a team like
You
Butler.
absolutely have to act like you're in the same league. Yes, I mean, that's what part of the beginning of the season schedule is. When you look at teams like Arizona, we're going to Ohio State.
Right.
That's why you play those games. So when you play Butler at home, you play Cleveland State at home, those type of games, and that's why you have to obviously have that mentality, and they do. They understand that. I mean, we saw the big game at home last year. They know they can do it. And that New Year's Day game, they knocked down a couple of those threes. They were like 0 for in the first half. Yeah. They knocked down a couple of those threes. They're down by 5 at halftime. It might be a different ball game.
Well, we're going to take a quick timeout, but when we come back, we'll talk about the top 3 NFL quarterbacks, as well as debate the likelihood of the NBA season starting on time. You're watching Valpo SportsNite. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Valpo SportsNite. I'm Drew Taylor. Again, joining me to my right is Mike Targonski, General Manager of WVUR and Sports Staff Writer for The Torch. Also is Dave Caulfield, Assistant Sports Director at WVUR. Guys, let's jump into some national topics now. I want to get your biggest surprise in college football this year.
If you're talking about the biggest surprise that's going to happen this year, I'm going to say a player gets paid. Because it's been such a
legally
hot topic.
or illegally?
Let's go legally.
Okay.
Because I think it's such a hot topic at the moment, and especially after the Terrell Pryor thing and all the stuff that blew up at Ohio State. I honestly think, at the time, I was a little bit more upset about the situation when it happened at Ohio State. Sure. I'm an Illinois fan, too, so I don't really like Ohio State.
Right.
But I was upset at the way it was handled. It cost a great coach a job, who's now in the NFL coaching or doing something somewhere. But the more I thought about it is, these guys are giving these rewards, they're in their possession of them. that they should have the right to do whatever they want. That's like me going down and pawning a watch that was given to me as a gift, kind of thing. So I've always been a firm believer in scholarships or the way you pay these players, and if you want to get to the next level and get paid, you better work your butt off and get it done. But I'm not going to be surprised if it happens this year.
And it breaks my heart to do this, but my biggest surprise is the absolute horrible start of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were ranked number 16 coming in. They had BCS hopes coming into the season, and then the 2 games happened, and I don't even know where to begin. South Florida should have won that game easily. South Florida's a good team, but, I mean, when you have 3 turnovers in the red zone, nothing's going to go right for you, even if you do outgain South Florida 2-1. And so they had 3 turnovers in the red zone, just couldn't get out of their own way. So then that upset happens. In the wake of that, I could have never seen what happened last week with the Michigan game. I got to give credit to Denard Robinson. He really has Notre Dame's number.
At this point, everybody does.
Ouch. But, I mean, there's some truth to that statement. But there's something about when Denard Robinson plays Notre Dame that just makes him play even better than he actually is. That was honestly one of the most painful games I've ever seen in my 19 years of existence. I mean, he drives 70 yards in less than 27 seconds with no timeouts used. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then this week, Notre Dame's playing number 15 Michigan State, and I don't see them winning that game either. An 0-3 start for a team that had BCS expectations coming in, it blows my mind.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm a firm believer that they were heavily overrated going into the regular season.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Yes, they had BCS aspirations, but should we really be that surprised about it?
Well, who put them at 15 or 16 coming into the year?
Absolutely.
Like, what were they, a 500 team last year?
Yeah.
I mean, they were not even respectable last year, and you put them in the top 25. I questioned like the BCS system for a very long time. And if that's the case, and that's how you're going to determine just based on notoriety who's going to be in the top 25, I'm totally against the system. Especially watching them play last year and, of course, the first 2 games this year has been pathetic. Brian Kelly's really made the wrong career move because he had one heck of a season in Cincinnati a couple years ago, and he's probably shaking his head saying, I need to be back there.
Quick question for you, though, regarding to paying players. Don't you think at some point, what is enough? These players are getting a $35,000 to $40,000 scholarship
Oh, it's enough now. I'm not saying I'm for it.
Okay.
I'm saying that the biggest surprise I think is going to happen. It's
going to happen.
Just the way it's been talked about. Everyone talked about last year going into the season, all these super conferences. Guess what happened? Yeah. We have a bunch of teams changing conferences, and we have this new competition in football. The Big Ten is 12 teams in 2 divisions. The Big Ten should be at 10 teams. The Big 12 should stay at 12. I don't know what's going on. They're at 10.
Yeah.
We got what, the Pac 42 right now? I mean, this isn't even fun anymore. So that's the reason I think this is when it gets to the topic. College football has to compete against the NFL.
And I can see both sides, but from my perspective, it's hard to feel bad for an athlete who's getting a free education when you and I are obviously paying for education from hard-earned money. But all right, anyways, let's move on. That was an interesting topic. Taking Peyton Manning out of the discussion because he's obviously hurt for a long period of time, maybe out for the whole season. What are you guys' idea of the 3 best quarterbacks right now?
Well, I think you have to start with the performance last week of Tom Brady.
Sure.
He's obviously number 1. I mean, 517 yards and 4 touchdowns. Those are video game numbers if I've ever seen them.
99 of them were on one pass, though.
Hey, dude, I put up those numbers on Madden before.
Yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Ask the quarterback.
I mean, he has great targets to go to in Wes Welker and Aaron Hernandez that really make his job easier, but still, I mean, you can't ignore the stats that he's been putting up. Number 2, I have Aaron Rodgers. He had 312 yards in his game against the Saints. But what I was more impressed with was his efficiency.
Sure.
He went 27 for 35. I mean, only missing 8 passes. That's pretty darn good right there. And number 3, it may not look like it from his Week 1 performance, but Michael Vick. He wasn't efficient at all with his passing. I think he went 14 for 32. For about 187 yards. But he had 99 yards rushing, and he can really extend the play if he's called on to do that. I mean, he really didn't have to do a lot playing the Rams Week 1. So he'll definitely get better as the season goes along and hopefully lead the Eagles to maybe a Super Bowl run.
Well, I agree with you on two of them, and I wouldn't have put Peyton Manning in there even if he was healthy.
Interesting.
And what I look at with quarterbacks is I look at numbers and I think about those, obviously. But all that matters to me is winning at the quarterback position. And there's 3 of them that are active in the NFL now that have rings that I think have a very good chance, no matter who's on their team, that they could get to the Super Bowl just based on them. Obviously, number 1 is Tom Brady. Until somebody else leads the NFL in passing yards, touchdowns, has the fewest interceptions, and has the best quarterback rating, I'm not going to replace him with anybody. Because you talk about the weapons he has. Okay, we missed Wes Welker an entire year, and guess where they went? They were a game away from the Super Bowl that season. Tom Brady is just a phenomenal quarterback, and he knows. I mean, I hate watching him play. He drives me nuts. Like, I want to go out and smack him around. Yeah. But he's a very good quarterback, very efficient. He gets the ball downfield, and guess what he does? He scores quick. And that's what you need sometimes. And like you talked about the Michigan game, Tom Brady could do that as well, I'm sure. Number 2, Rodgers, just coming off the Super Bowl win. You talked about his efficiency. I like pulling for the guy just because of the whole situation with falling in the draft and then replacing Favre and everything. But he has so many weapons. And when you look at what he did last year with all those weapons going down and Driver aging and Driver still producing, you have to go and look at Aaron Rodgers of why that this guy could still produce at that age. He's getting the ball downfield. He's got great receivers. He's very smart, very rarely turns the ball over, and he can scramble and get away from a sack. My third one's going to come to a bit of surprise, I think, for a few people, is Drew Brees. And I think as long as Drew Brees is the quarterback, I know Colston's out right now, and I know they don't have as explosive an offense as the year that they won the Super Bowl, but Drew Brees is consistently touching 400 yards a game, a couple touchdowns a game. And yes, I mean, last year against the Seahawks, he looked really bad. But I still believe that Drew Brees is the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL just because of the way he could throw the ball, manage a game, and also he is undeniably the leader of pretty much the city of New Orleans, it seems like.
I agree with most of your picks, and I'm going to definitely agree with your number 3 pick in Drew Brees. Also considering that, when's the last time they had a running game? I mean, Reggie Bush was there, but he was more of just a dynamic athlete that went out on the flaps.
It was before Brees' time when McAllister was healthy.
He was almost – I compared Drew Brees to Peyton Manning in a lot of respects because he has to carry so much of the load. I don't know if Michael Vick is there yet. I think he's on his way. He's more of an athlete to me that really can perform, and he can – don't get me wrong, he can win a ball game by himself.
Right.
But if you're looking purely quarterback –
and you also got to think about the pieces he has around him, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. He's got some weapons.
I mean, the dream team, but I mean, he has 2 of the most explosive receivers. This is a pre-dream team. 2 of the most explosive receivers in the NFL, in Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. Throw them a 5-yard screen pass, they could go 80 for you.
All right, we'll switch gears now to the National Basketball Association. Both players and owners are far away from reaching a new labor agreement. What do you think the chances are that the season starts on time?
0. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no chance. I don't think that there's any movement in these labor negotiations. Now, the NFL one lasted about 100, 120 days, and that was starting to draw out really long. And I think the NBA one might go a little bit longer. I don't know if the Players Union really knows what they want to do with the salary cap. And the big thing for me is I've heard less from the players about trying to get a deal done. And this was the whole thing going into it was what do the players want? What do the players want? They're very quiet, very greedy about their money in the NBA. And that is one thing that really scares me. And the willingness to go overseas sends me a signal that these players are not ready to play the NBA this season because they have been given no word on how anything's going to go, or they have no faith in how things are going to go. If you want me to put a date on it, when's the All-Star game? February something? Okay, maybe we play the last 50-some games of the year.
Sure.
If not, I don't see a season, actually. Okay. I really don't. But if we're going to put something, I would say February. They got to wait till the new year, but I don't think we have a season.
Yeah, it really doesn't look good. I also have a 0% chance of it starting on time. If anything, maybe halfway through the season. That's extremely generous. Sure. Union Executive Director Billy Hunter actually cautioned players to expect to miss up to half the season. And I think the thing about players going to play overseas really sends alarm signals that if these big caliber players already know that, hey, I need to go overseas to get some NBA action in, it's a really bad situation down there. Yeah.
The one difference to me from the NBA lockout and the NFL lockout is the NFL players really had nowhere to go. I mean, where are you going to go if you don't have a job in the NFL? There's no other leagues. A lot of these
there are other leagues, but they wouldn't be able to play.
Wouldn't be comparable at all. If you go overseas as an NBA player, you're a star. You're the man. You're getting paid almost basically just as much as you could in the States, obviously it's not the NBA.
Right.
You don't have a finals to compete for or anything like that, but they can still get theirs. They can still get money. So I don't think they're going to budge. I mean, the players in the NFL in that labor agreement, they budged because they knew that if they don't play, their career span is short. NBA, they can go overseas and make just as much money.
Yeah, when you saw big name players looking at going overseas, that wasn't a good signal. They're talking about getting Kobe to go over there.
Right.
I mean, that was the big thing. Is like, why would Kobe Bryant even consider? Why would his name even be mentioned? Because he's the guy that you would think would be the first one to speak out in the NBA at this time. You know, there's not really a spokesperson around the NBA much. Jason Kidd might be the closest thing.
Derek Fisher does a little bit too.
Derek Fisher too, yeah. But I mean, when they started seeing like big name players, Dwight Howard thinking about it, that really too much concern came.
Okay.
And I think they're very far apart in terms of money.
Yeah, and keep in mind there were only a handful of teams that actually made money last year. The salaries are just being ridiculous for how much for a small market team. I'll use Milwaukee as an example. They're paying the players, an enormous amount of money. These ticket prices are almost too much for a small market team. I mean, there's something needs to be done here. The players are getting too much of the pot, in my opinion.
Well, apparently the NBA talks faltered because LeBron motioned to make the games up to 3/4.
All right, guys, on that note, we'll wrap things up.
It didn't pass, just so you know.
Okay, good. I want to thank Mike Targonski and Dave Caulfield. I'm Drew Taylor. Thanks for watching this edition of Valpo Sports Night. We'll see you next week.